Hey everyone, welcome to Six Path Weeb, your go-to spot for anime fanfics with a twist. Today's story dives into an alternate Naruto universe where Naruko unlocks the power of telepathy, and trust me, it changes everything. Quick disclaimer, this channel is purely for entertainment and fan discussion. I don't own any of the anime footage used here, all rights and credit go to the original creators and copyright holders. Now that we've got that covered, let's jump into it. Hidden Leaf Village, 6 years after the QB incident, 9 p.m. Find that child. She went this way, shouted a villager, chasing after a young girl with sunbright, spiky blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes, full of life and curiosity. She wore a well-worn black t-shirt with an orange swirl in the center and shorts to match. Despite the state of her clothes, her spirit remained strong. Come on, keep running, Naruko thought as she sprinted through the village, using the rooftops and narrow alleyways like a seasoned acrobat. She'd been chased enough times to develop quite the agility, though she didn't realize it, she was instinctively using chakra to enhance her movements. She eventually stumbled into a quiet part of the village she'd never explored. To her right, she noticed a stone monument engraved with names. Before she could read it, footsteps echoed behind her. Her eyes widened, she had to move. What's going on? Why are you doing this? Naruko cried, her voice full of confusion as she tried to escape. A sudden blow from behind caused her to lose consciousness, and the world around her dimmed. The villagers surrounded her and, convinced she was no longer a concern, began to leave. However, a few lingered, unsure what to do next. We need to make sure she's not found, one said. If the Hokage knew what happened, he'd never let it go. They decided to let the river nearby carry her away. As they walked off, no one noticed the faint movement in the water. Naruko was still breathing, gently carried downstream. Forest of Shadows, half an hour later. A hand reached up from the riverbank as Naruko slowly pulled herself onto the grass. Each breath was difficult, but she was alive. She looked up at the sky through tear-filled eyes. Why does this always happen to me? She whispered. Suddenly, a calm, resonant voice echoed in her mind. That's enough crying, young one. Startled, she sat up slightly. Who's there? She asked, scanning the dark forest. Close your eyes and focus on my voice. She did so and, in a moment, found herself standing in a strange place. Water reached up to her knees, and the dim surroundings led her to a massive gate. Behind the bars, two large, glowing eyes with slit pupils peered at her. Are those eyes? She gasped silently. A gigantic figure emerged, a towering fox with 9 majestic tails. I am Kurama, the 9-tailed fox. On the night you were born, I was sealed inside you by your father to protect the village. This was not my choice, but neither was it yours. I've watched your life and the hardships you've faced. You know my father? Naruko asked, still in shock. Yes. He and your mother were heroes. I can offer you something now, an opportunity to start fresh, in a world where no one sees you as anything but yourself. Naruko's eyes lit up with hope. Really? What do I need to do? Trust me. Remove the seal, and I will take you somewhere new. With determination, she reached for the seal. As it faded, Kurama stepped forward, but suddenly, 2 familiar figures appeared behind Naruko, pulling her into a warm embrace. Minato. Kushina. It's good to see you again, Kurama said with a soft expression. Naruko turned in their arms, wide-eyed. Papa? Mama? That's right, Naruko-chan, Kushina said warmly. Look at you. You're so brave and kind, just like your father. Minato smiled at her. We didn't want to leave you, sweetheart. There were forces beyond our control. On the night of your birth, a masked figure attacked. I managed to protect the village, but we couldn't stop everything. Kushina nodded. We sealed Kurama inside you because we believed in your strength. And we're so sorry for everything you've gone through. It's okay, Naruko said softly. I understand. Kurama has been watching over me, and now I can start again. Minato and Kushina looked at each other, then at Kurama. You're really going to send her somewhere safe? Minato asked. Kurama nodded. I've seen her heart. She deserves this chance. Then we'll help, Kushina said, placing a hand on Naruko's shoulder. Minato did the same. They transferred their knowledge to her. Kushina gave her lessons in swordsmanship, water-style techniques, and survival skills. Minato passed on chakra control methods, wind-style training, and sealing knowledge. I learned so much, Naruko gasped, feeling stronger and more confident. Minato and Kushina hugged her tightly. Remember, Minato said, no matter where you go, we love you. Forever and always, Kushina added. I love you too, Naruko cried as her parents slowly faded away. Thank you, Kurama, she said, turning to the great fox. My name is Kurama, he said gently. And yes, we're friends. Rest now. Tomorrow, your journey begins. Next night, Forest of Shadows. Naruko stood proudly in her new outfit, a black hoodie with a red swirl on the back, camouflage-style pants, and ninja sandals. Her bag was packed with scrolls, food, clothing, and some wind-style techniques. All right, Naruko, Kurama said with enthusiasm, hold on tight, because we're off on a brand new adventure. A brilliant light enveloped them, and the forest vanished as Naruko was whisked away through a tunnel of swirling energy. East Blue, 3 p.m. The sky opened, and Naruko suddenly found herself falling, with nothing but ocean below. Ah, she shouted, flailing through the air. There's a ship below. Aim for it, Kurama urged. Naruko focused, adjusting her body mid-fall, determined to land safely. A new world awaited her, and with it, a chance to become the person she was always meant to be. Naruko did as she was instructed, doing her best to move her body toward the ship. Though she missed the mark slightly, she still landed within the general vicinity. Naruko splashed into the sea with a mighty crash, her body sinking beneath the waves. As she descended, she collided with something scaly and immense. Her eyes widened in surprise as she realized she had bumped into a massive sea creature, easily the size of the Hokage building, possibly larger. A chill of fear rushed through her. Whoa, she exclaimed, bubbles escaping from her mouth as she kicked away from the creature, swimming upward as fast as she could. Eventually, she broke the surface, gasping for air and glancing around, only to see the enormous beast rise from the sea, towering over her. I really hope I get out of this okay, she muttered, as the creature let out a loud roar and loomed closer. Suddenly, a large black orb flew through the air and struck the creature, bursting with powerful force and knocking it back into the ocean. Hey! Kid, grab the rope, someone shouted. Naruko turned her head and saw a rope fly past her. She grabbed it tightly with both hands, clutching her backpack as she was pulled toward the ship. Once near the deck, she climbed aboard, tumbling over the railing onto the wooden floor. Naruko landed on her hands and knees, breathing heavily as she dropped her bag. What was that thing? That was a sea king. A smaller one, actually, a voice replied. Naruko looked up to see a man wearing sandals, brown pants with a unique yellow pattern, a red sash holding a sword at his side, and a white button-up shirt. Over his shoulders, he wore a black trench coat that draped like a cape. His left side was concealed, and his red hair and 3 scar lines across his face were hard to miss. She also noticed a tall man with black hair, dressed in a black v-neck shirt with a yellow sash, white pants, and black boots. Then came a round man with glasses, munching on a piece of meat. He wore a green and white striped shirt with a matching bandana, white pants, and red shoes. Finally, her eyes landed on a curly blonde-haired man with dreadlocks and a bandana labeled Yasop. He wore a blue button-up shirt and gray pants. Thank you for saving me back there, I really appreciate it. I'm Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze, she said with a smile, extending her hand. The red-haired man took her hand with a friendly grin. Naruko, huh? That's a unique name. She narrowed her eyes playfully. It means maelstrom, just so you know. The man chuckled. No offense, I was just teasing. I'm Shanks, and these are my crewmates. He pointed to the others. That's Ben Beckman, my first mate, and over there are Lucky Roo and Yasop. Shanks' tone grew a bit more serious. But what are you doing all the way out here in the East Blue? Naruko hesitated. You might not believe me. And it's kind of personal. I don't really want everyone knowing my past. Shanks nodded understandingly. How about you just share it with me, Ben, Roo, and Yasop? I vouch for them. Naruko looked at each of them cautiously. What do you think, Kurama? Can I trust them? She asked internally. I don't sense any bad intentions, Kurama replied. This man reminds me of your mother. You can trust him. Feeling reassured, Naruko nodded and followed Shanks into his quarters. There, she was offered a seat as the others sat nearby, ready to listen. She spoke about her time in the village, how she had been treated unfairly and excluded as a child, especially during birthdays. She talked about the hardships and how she met her parents through a spiritual connection. Her dream was to grow stronger so she could protect herself and those she cared about. She wanted to be known and respected by the world. When she mentioned her mother's advice to find someone special in life, the mood lightened, and Shanks chuckled. Sounds like you've got a proud mom. Naruko grinned. And I'm proud of her. She was amazing. People in my world called her the Red Tempest. Shanks suddenly shivered. She didn't happen to have long red hair. Did she? Yeah, she did. Why? Shanks looked stunned. I think she just gave me a warning somehow. Naruko burst into laughter. That sounds like her. Kurama laughed as well from within her mind. Naruko wiped her tears of laughter, then turned serious again. Please, I need help. Kurama says you're strong like my mom and dad. I want to learn from you. The four men exchanged glances before nodding. Shanks smiled. All right, Naruko. We'll train you. Before she could celebrate, Shanks raised a hand. But first, you'll need to master everything your parents left for you. Once you do that, then we'll start. Overcome with gratitude, Naruko hugged him. Thank you. Thank you so much. Shanks gently patted her head. Just know we'll train you hard, but we believe in you. Naruko blinked, curious. What's a pirate, anyway? Shanks chuckled and began explaining the concept of pirates, the navy, and the world government. He described how both good and bad people exist on all sides and promised that, whether she chose to be a pirate or a marine, they would support her. 5 years later on an island. Naruko trained relentlessly, mastering the skills her parents had left behind. She was now close to a Chunin or special Jonin in strength, and her chakra control had improved significantly. She could walk on water for days, and her sealing techniques had become efficient. She developed her own wind-based technique called impact, designed to deliver powerful blows. To sharpen her stealth, Naruko pulled harmless pranks on Shanks, which earned her a mixture of laughter and playful revenge. Naruko. Why is my shirt bright neon orange? Shanks shouted, storming across the camp. Naruko giggled from a tree branch, whispering, hee hee, got you again. I guess I'll just have the ramen roux made for you then, Shanks said casually. A blur of golden hair dashed in front of him. Roux made me ramen? Shanks caught her in a playful leg hold and gave her a friendly noogie. Yup, but first. The noogie of doom. Naruko laughed and struggled, her joy filling the air. Shanks eventually let her go and patted her head. Come on, let's go eat. As they walked, Naruko grew quiet. Shanks, could you teach me swordsmanship? He raised an eyebrow. I thought your mom taught you? She did. But her style is graceful and flowing. I just don't feel it fits me. I hope she's not upset. Shanks smiled warmly. Your mom would be proud that you understand yourself. That takes strength. At the camp, the crew welcomed them back. Hey, Miss Maelstrom. Ramen's ready. Naruko dug in enthusiastically, unaware the crew had added something playful to the broth to make her drowsy after eating 20 bowls. 3 months later on another island, with a waterfall. Naruko stood behind the waterfall, focusing all her chakra into her blade. With determination, she sliced the falling water in half. For a moment, she cheered, until she noticed a hidden opening behind the falls. She dove into the river and swam into the cave. Inside was a glowing black tree with a mysterious fruit covered in swirling patterns. Kurama. Is this a devil fruit? Looks like it. Best to ask Shanks before doing anything with it, Kurama advised. Naruko carefully cut the fruit from the tree using a small wind blade, then swam back and ran to camp, eager to share her discovery. Shanks. I did it, I cut the waterfall, she shouted joyfully, holding the fruit in her hands. Shanks looked up to see Naruko with her right hand behind her back, which sparked his curiosity, though he decided not to ask about it right away. Took you long enough to handle that waterfall challenge, Shanks teased with a laugh. I was starting to wonder if we should just build a town and settle here. Naruko pouted slightly at the remark, but she knew Shanks was only playing around. Well, mostly. Oh, if that's how it is, maybe I just won't tell you about the amazing treasure I found behind the waterfall, she replied with a playful grin, instantly catching Shanks' attention and causing his laughter to fade. What treasure are you talking about, Naruko? Shanks asked, now genuinely curious. Others nearby, who could catch a glimpse of what she was hiding behind her back, were already wide-eyed in awe. Naruko then brought her hand forward to reveal a fruit, and Shanks' expression immediately turned serious. I recognize that fruit, Shanks said, his eyes growing as wide as sake dishes once shared by Whitebeard. Oh? Could you tell me which one this is, if it's not too much trouble? Naruko asked with sincere curiosity. Judging by Shanks' reaction, it was clearly something extraordinary. Indeed, Kurama added in her thoughts, just as curious about the mysterious fruit that had stunned someone like Shanks. Shanks stood up slowly and leaned in for a closer look. That's the Zetai Yami no Mi. It grants the user absolute control over shadows and darkness. Compared to this, Gecko Maria's shadow fruit seems like child's play. Naruko's eyes widened as she examined the fruit, feeling the weight of its potential. Just then, she felt a hand rest gently on her shoulder. She looked up to see Shanks, his expression now deeply serious. Naruko, you need to either use that fruit or make sure it's never found by the wrong person. It's far too powerful to be left unattended, even in the most secure place imaginable. In the right, or wrong, hands, this fruit could shift the balance of power in the world, Shanks explained with calm urgency. Whoever wields it could rival legends like Whitebeard or even Gol D. Roger. Naruko now understood just how important the fruit truly was. If this ended up with someone irresponsible, things could go in a very troubling direction, she thought, weighing her options. Eat it, Kurama encouraged gently. With that power, you could protect others in ways you never imagined. And it's not like you need to swim, you can use your chakra to move through water safely. Naruko took a deep breath, nodded to herself, and made her choice. She confidently ate the fruit, embracing the responsibility that came with it. Bah! That tasted awful. Someone get me some ramen, Naruko exclaimed, wiping her mouth with a scowl as everyone around her stood frozen in surprise. She had just consumed the mysterious devil fruit with barely a second thought. And Naruko, how do you feel? Shanks asked, clearly concerned. I feel fine, she replied casually, though curiosity flickered in her eyes. Moments later, her right arm darkened, taking on a purplish-black hue. Whoa, now that's cool, she murmured, pulling her arm back before launching it forward. Her arm extended into the forest, smacking into a tree and cracking the bark. Retracting it, Naruko's expression turned thoughtful. Not quite as strong as I hoped, but let's try something else. Her voice hinted at wonder as she reshaped her fist into a sharp spike and launched it again. The dark spike struck the same tree with precision. Two axe-like extensions emerged from the sides of the tree, making it topple over. She pulled her arm back, now returning to a hand form, and flexed her fingers. Very interesting, Naruko whispered with an almost playful smile. Okay, Naruko, that was incredible, Shanks said, smiling. Now that your wind chakra training is complete, it's time to introduce you to a group who specialize in Logia-type devil fruits. Come to think of it, they're skilled with nearly everything. Some crewmates paled. Sea Captain. Please don't tell me you mean that crew. Shanks chuckled. Oh? So you figured out I meant Old Man Whitebeard. He leaned close to the crew member and added teasingly, you didn't eat a devil fruit that lets you read minds, did you? Everyone's sweat dropped as they silently questioned their captain's sense of humor. All right, everyone, get moving. We're heading out. Shanks ordered as the crew began gathering supplies. Back on the ship, Naruko sat on a railing, watching the ocean flow past as she practiced molding her dark energy into different shapes, axes, spikes, shields, whatever came to mind. Hey, Naruko, Yasop greeted as he placed a hand on her shoulder. She turned and smiled. Hey Yasop. What's up? Time for training, he said with enthusiasm. Ooh. Are you finally going to teach me how to shoot? She asked eagerly. Yasop laughed, ruffling her hair. That's right. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be able to hit a bullseye with your eyes closed. He grew serious. But first, some important rules. Never draw your weapon unless you're ready to use it. If you hesitate, someone else won't. Naruko nodded, absorbing every word. Second, once you fire, you can't take it back. That shot will always matter, so choose carefully. Again, Naruko nodded solemnly. And third, never, ever point a weapon at a comrade. Accidents break trust. Got it? Yes, sir, she replied firmly. Yasop led her to a makeshift range with several flintlock pistols laid out. She picked one up and followed his instructions carefully. Her first shot missed by an inch. Darn it. Hey, that was really close, Yasop reassured her. At this rate, you'll give my son a run for his money one day. Naruko's eyes widened. Really? Absolutely. She beamed and got back to practice. Over the next couple of hours, her aim steadily improved. Later, Shanks approached her with a box in hand. Take a break, Naruko. We're running out of targets, he laughed. What's in the box? She asked curiously. Open it and see. Inside was a brand new outfit, a long-sleeved cotton shirt in royal purple with 3 silver buttons, white pants replacing her older camo ones, and sleek black steel-toed boots. A light purple sash tied it all together and would serve to hold her sword. Dash. A few weeks later, in Whitebeard territory. All right Naruko, listen closely, Shanks said seriously. Whitebeard doesn't like having his time wasted. But he dislikes fear even more. Good thing I know you're no coward, right? You got that right. Naruko grinned. She walked confidently beside Shanks, dressed in her new gear. Yasop, Beckman, and Lucky Roo flanked them, all alert and observant. Yasop gave Naruko an encouraging nod. He'd grown fond of the energetic and determined girl. As they reached the large courtyard, they found the Whitebeard pirates waiting. Ace, Marco, Jozu, Thatch, and finally, the legendary Whitebeard himself stood tall and commanding. Be very careful around that man, Shanks whispered. His presence alone is beyond powerful. Stronger than even the greatest shinobi I've ever heard of. Oi, Whitebeard! Shanks called, and the Whitebeard crew turned toward them. Well. Red-haired Shanks, huh? Whitebeard's deep voice echoed across the courtyard. Didn't expect to see you. Last time was when I crossed paths with Roger. Shanks chuckled. Brought you some sake from my home island. Let's share a drink. Naruko touched a seal on her wrist, summoning a massive sake saucer, stunning the onlookers. Shanks poured, then tossed the gourd toward Whitebeard, who caught it with ease and drank. Not bad, the elder pirate muttered. Didn't come all this way just to drink, Shanks added. I've got a proposal. I want you to train someone in my crew. She's got a rare Logia power, and I'm not well versed in them. If you help her, I'll owe you a favor, and more importantly, we become allies. Now that got everyone's attention. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed. Depends. Who is it, and what's her power? Shanks turned to Naruko and gestured for her to step forward. Oi, Kurama, let them sense what we've got, Naruko murmured. Coming right up, the fox replied from within. A soft, deep purple aura surrounded Naruko as she walked up. My name is Naruko Uzumaki, and I'm. She was cut off by booming laughter. Gururara. Your name means fish cake. What kind of name is that? Whitebeard chuckled heartily. Naruko's brow twitched as her aura darkened just a bit. It means maelstrom, old man. And you call yourself Whitebeard? You don't even have one. You should be called White Mustache. Everyone went silent. Then Whitebeard burst out laughing again. Gururara. You got me, kid. Haven't been teased like that since Roger. Naruko smiled and continued. As I was saying. I need help learning to control my devil fruit abilities. Before she could finish, a girl from Whitebeard's crew stepped forward. She wore a green shirt, white pants, and carried a beautifully decorated saber. Her eyes were sharp, and her posture bold. You've got a lot of nerve. Insulting our captain and then asking for help? Maybe I should knock you down a peg. The red-haired crew collectively winced. Naruko's aura subtly intensified again, her eyes focused and calm. If you really want to spar, I'm ready. The girl, named Haruta, stepped forward confidently. The two faced each other, blades drawn, slowly approaching. Then, in a burst of motion, they clashed, swords ringing out as they dueled. Haruta's agility gave her a slight edge at first, but Naruko's control and technique held strong. Naruko then performed a swift upward slash, which Haruta managed to block. With a burst of chakra, Naruko sent Haruta skidding backward. However, before she could regain her footing, Naruko channeled more chakra into her legs and reappeared behind her in a flash, catching Haruta off guard. Reacting quickly, Haruta spun around to counter, but Naruko ducked gracefully and crossed her arms, placing her palm gently against Haruta's stomach. In a calm, steady voice, she whispered, "Impact." A strong gust of wind burst from her hand, launching Haruta backward toward Whitebeard's feet. The force knocked the wind from her lungs, and she knelt, clutching her stomach while catching her breath. I'm fine with a little friendly back and forth, Naruko said, her voice composed but serious. But when you mention my parents, the ones who gave everything to protect me the day I was born, that crosses a line. She sheathed her blade and walked toward Haruta, extending her hand to help her up. But since you didn't know, I'll let it go this time. We can still be friends. She offered a warm, sincere smile. Haruta blinked in surprise, then smiled back and took her hand. Gururara. Well, Shanks, It looks like we've got a deal, Whitebeard said with a chuckle. Haruto's one of my most promising fighters. For your young one to stand toe-to-toe with her, that's no small feat. Naruko beamed with pride at the compliment from the renowned Whitebeard. All of you, step out for now, except Ace, Jozu, and Marco, Whitebeard instructed. As the others cleared the area, Whitebeard studied Naruko closely. So, young one, what kind of fruit did you eat? Your skills are remarkable, but they don't seem to come from ordinary training alone. Naruko gave a small nod, and suddenly a dark circle appeared beneath her, causing everyone to stare in awe. The shadows enveloped her until she was surrounded in a pitch-black aura, her eyes glowing brightly like twin moons. The three commanders, Ace, Jozu, and Marco, watched with wide eyes. None of them had ever witnessed such a transformation. Pops? Ace asked cautiously, glancing at Whitebeard, who was unusually silent. Whitebeard leaned back, taking a slow drink of his sake. Finally, he looked from Naruko to Shanks and smiled thoughtfully. To see that fruit appear again. I never thought I'd live to witness it. Shanks, having her as an ally is truly fortunate. What is that fruit, Pops? Marco asked, still puzzled. Whitebeard's tone turned solemn. There's no mention of it in most records because the world government erased all traces of it. It was feared for its immense potential. It was one of the original fruits ever documented, known as the Absolute Darkness fruit. Just as powerful as my Gura Gura no Mi. The crew looked back at Naruko, still surrounded by a black mist-like aura. Ace grinned, clearly intrigued. Flames danced along his arms as he stepped forward. All right, Naruko. If we're going to train you, we need to see what you've got. Show us your skills. Naruko responded quickly, dodging Ace's fire-imbued punch with a graceful spin. She launched a swift kick, passing harmlessly through Ace's flame form. He countered with a punch, sending Naruko sliding back across the courtyard. She flipped smoothly, landing on her feet, and began forming hand signs. Dark Wind Blade, she called out. Black wind encircled her hands like concentrated gusts, each about a foot long. The combination of wind and chakra made her movements blur to most, though the seasoned fighters around her could keep up. Naruko dashed forward and slashed upward and diagonally across Ace. He turned to flame once more, but to his surprise, the flames were extinguished momentarily, and he was left with a faint mark across his chest. Without air, fire can't breathe, Naruko said calmly. Before she could follow up, Ace caught her with a flaming kick, sending her skidding backward again. She recovered quickly. Thanks for the tip, Ace said, giving her a nod. Let's keep going. Naruko nodded and drew her dark-bladed sword. With a trio of quick slashes, 2 diagonal, 1 vertical, she sent arcs of black wind slicing toward Ace. He dodged skillfully, only for a shadowy hand to rise from the ground and grab his arm, slamming him into the ground. Naruko then reshaped her arm into a hammer and tried to strike, but Ace rolled out of the way and sent a flurry of fire blasts toward her. A portal opened beneath Naruko, allowing her to evade effortlessly. She reappeared in the same spot, focused and ready. Vacuum black air bullet. She announced, forming 4 small compressed blasts of air, launching them toward Ace. One grazed his shoulder, making him stagger slightly. Ace smiled at her strength. She's got serious potential. Taking on someone with my abilities and landing hits? That's no small thing, he thought, echoing the amazement of the others present. 6 years later, aboard the Moby ship. Now 17, Naruko stood tall on the deck of the ship. She wore a fitted black shirt with a dark purple swirl on the left arm, sleeves rolled up to reveal a mark on her forearm, which she always dismissed as a tattoo. An eternal log pose adorned her left wrist. Though her outfit had grown with her, her sea stone sword was still strapped to her side with a deep purple sash. Her presence was confident, refined after years of training with Whitebeard and Marco. She had mastered different forms of Haki and had developed excellent control over her devil fruit power, allowing her to manipulate shadow energy and move with incredible speed and precision. As she stood surrounded by the crew, she looked at the elder figure before her. So, it's finally time for us to go our separate ways, huh? She asked with a small smile. That's right, kid, Whitebeard said warmly. But you'll always have a place here. Go and make us proud. Naruko nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and emotion. Just then, Haruto came over and gave her a hug and a kiss on the cheek. Take care of yourself, little sister, she teased playfully. Don't let the world overwhelm you. Ace, Marco, and Thatch were waiting for her at the edge of the ship. Good luck out there, Marco said, patting her shoulder. Thatch chuckled as he passed by. Make sure to keep that smile of yours. It lights up the ship. Then came Ace. He hugged Naruko and placed something on her head. She looked up and removed it, a replica of Ace's hat, only black, with a pendant featuring a gray fox and an electric purple background. "I've always wanted one like yours," she said, grinning and hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Ace." Ace laughed. "Naruko, I've got a favor to ask. I heard a rumor that my little brother Luffy is forming a crew out in the East Blue. Supposedly he even got Yasopp's son to join. I know you were planning to head out there anyway. Would you keep an eye on him for me?" Naruko placed a hand on his shoulder and gave him a confident smile. "Of course. That sounds perfect. I'll look after him." With that, she secured her hat, hoisted her bag, and leapt from the ship, landing on the back of a giant black hawk. She turned and waved to the Whitebeard pirates as she soared into the sky. "Kurama, can you track anyone with a similar energy to Yasopp?" she asked. Faint, but yes. I sensed something near Konami Islands," Kurama responded. "All right. Luffy, here we come," Naruko shouted joyfully as she flew off into the horizon. Kurama, I think we're getting closer. I feel an energy similar to Yasopp's, not to mention a battle going on." Naruko hummed out as she squinted her eyes. "What an odd-looking building." "Naruko, I think that's where the battle is happening, you dummy," Kurama replied. To confirm, a small explosion went off. "Yup, you're right. Full speed ahead." As Naruko arrived, she saw a boy with a scar under his left eye, both legs flying up and smashing into the concrete. A rubber stretchy man. Must be Luffy. What's he doing? Naruko thought, only to see Arlong smashing his hands into the ground, about to pick it up. Well, that's a problem, she muttered as she watched Arlong prepare to throw Luffy into the water. Naruko quickly formed some hand signs. Vacuum air bullet. She launched 3 well-placed bullets, destroying the slab of concrete and piercing Arlong's left shoulder and stomach. Ugh! Arlong fell back, holding his left shoulder and stomach. Who did that? Arlong demanded, enraged, as no one spoke up. Who did it? He yelled. That would be me, Naruko said, crouched down on the lowest tile ledge of Arlong Park's main building. Her hat was tilted, covering her face, and all you could see was her mischievous grin. Who the hell are you, and what do you want, human? Can't you see I'm in the middle of a fight? Arlong said, irritated, still unsure who he was dealing with. Naruko smirked. Well, to answer your questions in order, she said, pushing her hat up with a finger to reveal her face, marked with 3 whisker-like marks and her electric blue eyes. The name is Namikaze Yu Naruko. As for why I'm here. She let the statement hang in the air as she looked at Luffy. I'm here to join your crew. Ha ha ha. Everyone stared in surprise, including Luffy. And my crew? Why would you want to join my crew? Luffy asked. Naruko laughed at his reaction, placing a hand on her chin as if thinking. Well, there are a number of reasons. For one, Shanks never stopped talking about you, so I'm naturally curious. Luffy's eyes widened, and a huge grin appeared on his face. Next, Yasopp always said how great a marksman his son would be, she added, noticing Usopp almost tear up at hearing his father's belief in him. But probably the most important reason is your brother asked a favor and sent me to keep an eye on you, Luffy. Naruko smiled at Luffy. Before Luffy could react, Arlong cut in. Like I cared WHO sent you. You dirty human. Naruko quickly responded by sending a swift kick to Arlong's chest. The force sent him flying across the water, making everyone gasp in shock. Holy crap. I know Luffy was holding back against Arlong, but I didn't even see Naruko move. Zoro thought as he witnessed the scene. Naruko turned back to Luffy. Geez, what a loud little goldfish, huh, Luffy? Luffy laughed. Just then, Arlong shot out of the water, aiming straight for Naruko, who smiled and moved aside, letting Arlong crash into the building. Naruko glanced at Arlong as he climbed out of the rubble. You know, Arlong, Tiger would be so disappointed in you, Naruko said calmly. Arlong looked stunned, then exploded in anger. What would you know? Tiger died helping your kind. I'm the top of the food chain here. Naruko's ice blue eyes hardened as she spoke coldly. This is my first and only warning, Arlong. Leave this place and never come back, or I'll stop you right here and now. Naruko released Kurama's intense presence, and Arlong began to tremble, realizing the danger. The others around him were nervous, too, though Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro remained calm, knowing Naruko was incredibly strong. Despite his fear, Arlong's pride took over. I won't let a human beat me. I'm the strongest, he yelled in his head, charging at Naruko in blind rage. As he lunged at her, no one noticed her hands forming one-handed signs, her left hand still in her pocket. She whispered, "Wind blade." Zoro was the only one to notice the subtle shift in the air. Naruko sidestepped Arlong's attack and swiftly swiped at his neck with the wind-charged strike. Arlong staggered a few steps, reaching the edge where the water began. Naruko calmly turned her head, watching the back of Arlong as his hair fell, a clean cut across his neck, his head rolling into the water, followed by his body. The area fell silent before a townsman yelled, "It's over. Arlong is defeated." The townspeople erupted in cheers. Everyone gathered around Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Naruko. "Hold it." A rat-looking man appeared. "I thank you for defeating Arlong, but you're pirates, so I'm going to arrest you all here." Nezumi laughed nervously, until he was knocked down by a wooden staff. "Where's my money, you crook?" Nami shouted, her staff poised. "You're going to pay for what you've done," Nezumi sneered, only for him to be knocked unconscious by the force of Luffy's conqueror's haki, stunning everyone, including Naruko, who had only known a few individuals with such power: Shanks, Ace, and Whitebeard. Nezumi was visibly trembling as all the conscious people around her were ready to confront her. She quickly returned the money and hurried to her ship, starting to sail away as fast as she could. However, Naruko wasn't about to let that happen. She walked to the edge of the island where Nezumi's ship could be seen in the distance. Naruko raised her arm forward, palm pointing upward. Everyone around her was curious about what she was doing until a small black swirling ball began to form, with white wind spiraling around it. Think of the small version of the Menma attack from RTN when he destroyed the Leaf Village. The small black ball then flew directly toward the ship. When it made contact with the ship, there was an explosion of darkness. When the dust settled, the ship and Nezumi were no more. Naruko simply walked past everyone, unfazed, as though nothing had happened. Kokoyashi Village, a couple of hours later. Naruko was sitting at a quiet bar while the others outside were partying. "You know, you should be having fun instead of sitting here alone," someone said. "Nah, I've done enough partying for a lifetime," Naruko replied without looking, recognizing the voice as female. She thought back to her time with Shanks and Whitebeard, chuckling softly to herself. She then turned to see a girl with short orange hair, wearing a green tank top and black pants. "Oh, you're the girl who had Luffy's straw hat. You must be important for him to trust you with it. And you're definitely beautiful enough," Naruko said with a wink, causing Nami to blush. Nami then took a seat next to Naruko, sizing her up. "Definitely a cutie, wonder how much money she's got," Nami thought, eyeing Naruko with a mischievous smile. Naruko chuckled at the thought. "So, mind telling me a bit about yourself? We'll probably be crew members soon," Nami asked with an adorable smile. "Sure, why not? But after I tell you my story, I'll want to hear yours," Naruko smiled back as Nami nodded eagerly. "Well, I guess I should start by saying I'm from a village far, far away," Naruko began, not completely lying. "I was sort of the outcast because of something I was born with. I'd rather not go into detail, but the bottom line is, the entire village hated me, well, except for maybe 3 or 4 people. Anyway, I was often mistreated, especially on my birthdays. On my 6th birthday, they went further than usual, almost taking my life. The only reason I survived is because they probably thought I was dead. They threw my body into the sea, but when I woke up, I was about to be eaten by a sea king. Fortunately, Shanks and his crew passed by and saved me." Naruko took a deep breath and noticed Nami's eyes widen with sorrow and shock. She gave her a reassuring smile before continuing. "After that, Shanks took me in as his own and started training me. After a few years, we went to an abandoned island so I could train by a waterfall. While there, I discovered a cave with a devil fruit in it. When I told Shanks, he said it was an extremely powerful fruit, and if I wanted to eat it, I would need proper training. That's when I went to train with the one and only Whitebeard crew." Nami's eyes grew wide in disbelief. Naruko continued her story, leaving out certain parts, but still sharing the main points. "So that's pretty much it, Nami," Naruko finished, smiling as Nami gave her a hug. "It's all in the past now, so I try not to worry too much about it," Naruko said, chuckling. "But don't you have a story to share too?" Before Nami could respond, the bar began to fill up with people, including the rest of the Straw Hat crew. Zoro was the first to approach Naruko, eager to find out just how strong she was. "Hey, Naruko, right?" he asked, receiving a nod. "I hate to be blunt, but I'm curious. How strong are you, and what kind of training have you had?" Everyone in the bar fell silent, intrigued by the question. Naruko raised an eyebrow, expecting such a question, but the attention was a bit overwhelming. Well, if I had to rank myself, I'd say I'm about the level of a vice admiral, if not a bit stronger, she said, scratching her chin casually. The entire bar went silent at her answer, with everyone looking stunned, except Nami. Even Zoro hadn't expected such a response. That would place you just below an admiral, Zoro stuttered in surprise. Yeah, I guess that sounds about right, though I've never actually seen an admiral fight. Technically, I didn't get to witness Akainu's fight back when he was just a vice admiral, Naruko replied, looking back at Zoro. And how did I get this strong? Well, it kind of happens when you're trained by red-haired Shanks and Edward Newgate, the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, for most of your life, Naruko chuckled at the surprised looks from everyone. The bar remained silent until Luffy's loud, unmistakable laugh filled the room. Shishishizzy. Well, it's settled, you're definitely part of the crew now. Naruko smiled at Luffy's enthusiasm, and everyone started celebrating again. She stood up, preparing to leave, but before she could take a step, 2 arms wrapped around her left side. She looked down to see Nami, smiling. I owe you a story. How about you walk me to my house, and we can talk? Nami asked. Naruko agreed, and the two of them walked to Nami's house. Along the way, Nami shared her story about Belle-Mere, the closest thing she had to a mother, and how she had been forced into a life of hardship under Arlong's tyranny. Nami almost broke down, but Naruko held her tightly in a comforting embrace. Nami let a few tears escape as she melted into the hug. I promise you, Nami, no one will ever treat you like that again, not while I draw breath, at least. I promise you that, Naruko said, looking down at Nami with a gentle smile. Nami yawned, clearly exhausted. Naruko laughed softly and patted her head before taking her hand. Nami blushed, and the two of them continued on their way. When they arrived at Nami's house, Naruko laid on the couch while Nami retreated to her room, reflecting on how drastically her life was changing. The next morning, Naruko woke up to a peaceful silence, with the only sounds being the birds chirping outside and the occasional noise of construction as the village was being repaired. She stretched and got out of bed, heading to the kitchen. Seeing that no one was awake yet, she decided to make some coffee for herself. As she sipped the warm drink, she couldn't help but wonder about the power of her captain. She knew Luffy had Conqueror's Haki, which made him stand out from everyone else. I'll have to ask him about it when I see him, she thought. Hey, what are you doing up so early? Nami asked, walking in wearing a large blue t-shirt, which looked almost like a dress. Naruko blushed slightly and smiled. I'm just used to waking up early for training, so it's natural for me. Nami nodded, understanding somewhat. When do you think we'll be setting sail? Naruko asked. Nami laughed. Whenever our crazy captain decides, which will probably be when he's collected enough food. You should go find him and ask. Naruko nodded and smiled, walking out. As she passed Nami, she gave her a wink, making Nami blush slightly. Naruko walked through the village until she found Luffy, sitting with a huge pile of meat in front of him. Well, Luffy, that's quite a lot of food you've got there. Luffy nodded, continuing to shovel food into his mouth. Naruko smiled, remembering how she used to eat ramen in similar fashion. She sat across from her captain, and after a moment of silence, she looked at him seriously. Luffy mirrored her expression. Luffy, I know you're strong, but since you're going to be captain, I need to know if you can handle yourself in a fight, Naruko said. Luffy smiled and nodded. I understand. I wouldn't want to be a weak captain either. Well, I can promise you that I'm definitely on the same level of strength as you, Luffy continued. When my grandpa found out I wanted to be a pirate, he trained me hard, saying that being a pirate was even more dangerous than being a marine. That's when I discovered I had Conqueror's Haki, and then my training intensified. I also learned observation Haki and armament Haki. Naruko nodded. If Luffy mastered any of those abilities, he would certainly be a formidable force. That's good to know, Naruko said, smiling. I can use Haki too, though I mostly rely on observation Haki, since my devil fruit doesn't really complement armament Haki. Luffy nodded in understanding. Every devil fruit has its strengths and weaknesses. So, when do we set sail, Captain? Naruko asked with a smile. We'll set sail later today, Luffy replied. I already had Usopp do an inventory of what we need, and Sanji is getting all the supplies. Zoro is somewhere doing something. Naruko chuckled. Alright, I guess I'll go grab my stuff and meet you at the ship. Naruko disappeared in a swirl of dark energy, reappearing in Nami's house. She grabbed her bag and called out, "Yo, Nami, I'm heading to the ship." When she got no reply, she shrugged and disappeared again. Later, as the crew prepared to depart, Naruko was sitting on a hammock she'd conjured herself, thinking about the adventures they would have. She had already faced some wild challenges, even having crossed paths with the Whitebeard pirates and one of the 7 warlords of the sea. She was proud of those accomplishments and looked forward to more adventures. Nami's voice rang out. "Set sail." Naruko stood up, stretching, and watched as Nami ran through the crowd, leaping onto the ship while unloading all the wallets she had just stolen. Naruko couldn't help but laugh at the reactions of the people as they discovered their pockets were empty. "Well, that was a sight to see, Nami," she said with a glint in her eyes. "But if you ever try to prank me, just know that you're starting a war with someone even Whitebeard wouldn't mess with." Nami shivered at Naruko's words as she walked off, chuckling to herself. Some time later, out at sea, Nami was talking to a bird. "What? You're raising your prices again?" Nami sighed, handing over more money. She then sat down with a glass of orange juice. "Oi, Nami, what are those papers?" Luffy asked, stretching his head to see. "They're just news reports, like updated bounties," Nami explained. Luffy frowned. "Aw, how come I don't have one yet?" "Probably because I've already taken care of the Marines before they could report us," Naruko said with a grin. "Anyway, Captain, where are we sailing to now?" Naruko asked. I don't know. What's the next island we'll pass by, Nami?" Luffy asked. "I think it's Log Town," Nami replied. Naruko raised an eyebrow. "That's where Gold D. Roger was executed." Luffy's eyes lit up at the mention of the legendary pirate. "It's decided. Set sail to Log Town." Naruko laughed at Luffy's excitement. Later, as the ship approached Log Town, Naruko walked off with Nami. "I know where to find." Naruko paused as she noticed Luffy running off toward the town. "Damn it, I just know this is going to lead to trouble." Zoro, walking by, patted Naruko on the back. "Yeah, you're probably right. But it'll work out. I'm off to look for some swords. See you later." As Naruko turned to leave, Nami grabbed her hand. You promised to take me to the casino, remember?" "Yeah, I remember. Let's go, Nami," Naruko replied, leading the way. At the casino, Naruko noticed a tall man with slicked back white hair and an open white jacket, puffing on a cigar. Quickly, Naruko pulled Nami close, wrapping an arm around her hip and tilting her hat to shield her face. Nami was about to speak when Naruko whispered, "That man is Smoker the White Hunter. He's known for catching pirates. Let's go." She led Nami through the casino and toward the slot machines, sitting down and pulling her into her lap. "I ran into him when I was with Ace and Thatch from Whitebeard's crew. I'm pretty sure he'll want to bring me in, even if I don't have a bounty." Nami looked concerned. "Why is his name Smoker the White Hunter and how strong is he?" Naruko grinned. "Watch." They both turned to see Smoker deal with a group of rowdy pirates, turning into smoke and quickly subduing them. He ate the smoke body fruit. He can turn into smoke. He's strong, but he's no match for me or Luffy. It would just be too troublesome to fight our way out of here. Nami giggled a bit, and Naruko smiled. They both watched as Smoker dealt with the pirates before leaving the casino. Naruko looked at the slot machine. "Now let's see if I've still got it," she said, pulling the lever with a mischievous smile. About 2 hours later. "Miss, we're going to have to ask you and your friend to leave the casino," a large, burly man told Naruko, who grinned and sighed. Okay, let me just put all of my money away," Naruko said, pulling out a scroll and sealing her 200,030 pelli inside. Nami, with stars in her eyes, was hanging onto her as they walked out of the casino. "I told you, casinos hate me, ha ha ha," Naruko laughed, holding on to Nami as they decided to walk back to the ship. They then saw Luffy flying overhead with Smoker fast on his trail. Naruko sighed in frustration and picked Nami up in a bridal carry. "Great, now we need to run for it. Nami, hold on, okay?" Nami nodded and wrapped her arms around Naruko as she began jumping across the buildings, catching up to Smoker, who was chasing Luffy. "Oi, Smoker," Naruko yelled as her right leg turned pitch black, and she sent a powerful kick straight at Smoker's chest, which, to his surprise, connected, sending him flying into a building. "Captain, I think we've overstayed our welcome," Luffy said, nodding. "It's time to set sail to the Grand Line," he exclaimed as he began jumping toward the ship. Naruko channeled chakra into her legs, speeding up. She soon passed her captain, who went wide-eyed. Once they made it to the ship, everyone was there except Zoro. Set sail. Luffy decided. Hey, what about Zoro, Luffy? Usopp asked in concern. Don't worry, Zoro will be here, shishishishi, Luffy laughed as they began to set sail. Naruko looked off to the edge of the city and saw Zoro's mossy green hair. Got him, she said, then opened her palm toward Zoro. A portal appeared beneath him, sucking him in, and moments later, a portal of darkness appeared on the ship, spitting Zoro out. Zoro screamed, and everyone stared at him. He quickly composed himself and yelled, "What the hell are you all looking at?" Everyone burst out laughing. Screw this. I'm going to sleep, Zoro grumbled as he leaned his head back against the mast. Nami. Luffy called. Where to next? He asked. Well, if we want to get to the Grand Line, there are only two options. We could go through the Calm Belt, but that's not advisable since there are no currents or winds, and the Sea Kings are much larger and more aggressive. The only way we'd be able to travel through there is if we had a sea stone-coated ship. So, that really leaves Reverse Mountain. I've heard about it and read about it, but never actually seen it, Naruko said as the others were surprised. Hey, when you're with a group of pirates that could probably take on the entire navy, you don't need to worry about something like a silly Sea King. Hee, silly Sea King, Naruko giggled a little. Well then, I guess it's time to set sail for Reverse Mountain, Luffy yelled to the sky. Oi, Zoro, you want to have a quick sparring session? I heard you want to be the best swordswoman in the world. I could give you a few pointers, since I've been taught by some of the best swordswomen in the world, and yes, that does include the woman at the top herself, Hawkeye, Naruko said with a grin. Zoro's eyes widened, and quicker than anyone could see, she had her 3 swords drawn with a smile on her face as Naruko sent her a grin in return. I'll take that as a yes, Naruko said, slowly drawing her sea stone blade in a reverse grip, much like Shanks did. She flipped the blade so she was holding it normally. Ready, go. Zoro charged at Naruko, spinning around to do a double horizontal attack across her body. But Naruko blocked both by positioning her sword pointing down and placing it in front of her, stopping both swords. Zoro then came at her with the sword in her mouth, aiming to strike Naruko's neck. Naruko countered by channeling chakra into her sword arm and, with raw strength, pushed Zoro's 2 blades up, causing them to collide with the sword in her mouth. Zoro, caught off guard by Naruko's strength, flipped back and landed on the rail of the ship, looking at her. Your movements are indeed powerful, but you rely too much on striking to take someone out in one hit. If someone can constantly stand against your attacks, you need to change things up a bit. Your moves are too predictable. Let your movements flow like water, and as you flow, the power will follow, I promise you. Now, again. Naruko and Zoro continued their sparring, the pace increasing occasionally to keep Zoro on her toes. After a couple of hours, Zoro dropped from exhaustion. How the hell did you get so strong? Zoro panted out, asking Naruko, who, despite defeating her the whole time, was still sweating slightly. Non-stop, grueling training most of my life. But despite the workout I just gave you, I'm only a little bit stronger than you when it comes to pure swordplay. The only reason I can beat you like that is because my speed, strength, and overall reflexes are better than yours. As long as you keep training your body and mind at an insane rate, I'm sure you'll catch up to me in terms of power in a year or so. Not to say I won't get stronger or faster, but I think my swordsmanship has hit a plateau for the most part. I doubt my skills will improve much from here. Zoro nodded, taking in what she said. Anyway, Zoro, here, Naruko tossed a bag next to Zoro. Those are scrolls and books from my previous teachers. You should try incorporating what they have into your fighting style. It would definitely help you out, especially the one with the whirlpool swirl on it. It'll help your flow exactly like water, Naruko explained as she started to wash off from the workout. I would also ask Luffy for hockey training since you're not a devil fruit user. Hockey is a must if you want to survive on the Grand Line. That goes for everyone here. Whenever you have free time, ask me or Luffy for instruction on hockey because sooner or later, you're going to need to learn it, Naruko said to the whole crew, with Luffy smiling and nodding in agreement. Hey, Naruko. Zoro called, and she turned to see Zoro with a serious and sincere look on her face. Thank you. Naruko smiled and waved her hand while turning around. Don't worry about it, that's what friends are for, she said as she went inside to wash up. Naruko changed into something more comfortable, black ninja sandals, black cargo shorts, and a long-sleeve, form-fitting shirt with dark crimson-red shoulders and sleeves, while the rest was black. She walked out, seeing Reverse Mountain ahead. "Here we go," Luffy shouted as they shot up Reverse Mountain's current. "Everyone hold on, we're about to hit the mountain peak," Naruko shouted, holding onto the railing with one hand and Nami with her other. She smiled and laughed as they flew into the air, with Nami gripping onto Naruko in a vice-like hold, scared she might fly off the ship. Once they came down and started descending the mountain, they saw a giant wall. "No, a whale? What the hell is that thing? Is that a whale?" Usopp yelled, terrified at the sight before him. At the bottom of Reverse Mountain. About to be swallowed by the whale. "Usopp, oh my gosh. It's going to eat us. I don't want to go down like this." Naruko's eyes widened at the sight of the massive whale. "What the heck? Most sea kings aren't even this big." "Quick, turn the ship," Nami shouted. Naruko, Sanji, and Zoro all pulled on the lever, while Usopp tried pushing it to turn the ship when. Crack! Naruko was holding half of the lever. How did this even happen?" Sanji yelled. "Naruko, can't you stop the whale somehow?" Zoro shouted, looking at Naruko as she shook her head negatively. "No, if I used an attack strong enough to stop that thing, we'd be caught in the blast too." The massive whale opened its jaws wide, and the water began pouring into its enormous mouth. "Looks like we're getting swallowed whole," Zoro murmured, as everything started to go dark. Inside the whale. Sanji looked around, adjusting to the surroundings, and then his eyes widened in surprise. "Guys! I'm no expert on whales, but why is there a sky inside the whale?" Everyone stood up and looked around, just as a giant squid emerged from the stomach acid. "A giant squid?" Usopp shouted, as Sanji, Zoro, Luffy, and Naruko all readied themselves to fight. 3 large spears then pierced the squid from behind, and the giant beast fell back into the stomach acid. The Straw Hat Pirates looked past the squid to see. "A house? Okay, what did you put in your food, pervy cook?" Zoro yelled. Sanji gave Zoro an angry look, his temper flaring. "Don't talk about my cooking, you moss head." Suddenly, a flash of lightning appeared between them, clashing violently until Nami stepped in, landing a hard fist to both their heads. "Enough, both of you." "Damn," Zoro muttered, rubbing his head. "My dear Nami, why?" Sanji stuttered, twitching on the ground. Naruko just shook her head at the two of them. Luffy then noticed an old man coming out from the shadows. "Hey! Old man, where are we?" The old man gave Luffy an icy look. "Humph! How rude. I'm only 71. I'm not old at all." The crew exchanged confused glances. Naruko walked up beside Luffy, but the old man cut her off. "My name is Crocus, and I'm Laboon's doctor and the lighthouse keeper." Everyone looked at him, confused. "Laboon? Who's Laboon?" Nami asked curiously. "The whale, of course," Crocus replied, as if it was obvious. "How do we get out of here, Crocus?" Naruko asked, feeling slightly frustrated. Before Crocus could answer, 2 people suddenly burst from a small door at the top of a metal platform beside the ship. Well, Mr. 9, it looks like we'll be having whale for dinner," said a woman with long blue hair tied in a ponytail. "Yes, Ms. Wednesday, it looks that way. Now, fire!" Mr. 9 commanded, as they both shot their cannons toward the top of the whale's stomach. "No," Crocus shouted. "I've got it," Naruko said calmly, summoning a black hole that sucked in the 2 cannons, causing them to disappear into the dark portal. Once the cannons were gone, the portal closed, as though it had never been there. "Luffy, you should probably handle these 2 before they cause more trouble," Zoro said. Luffy stretched his arms and grabbed the 2 troublemakers, slamming them onto the ship, leaving them unconscious. "Luffy," Sanji yelled, kicking his captain in the head. "How could you treat such beautiful ladies like that?" He turned to the woman, now awake, and began apologizing. "I'm sorry for my foolish captain. Please allow me to make it up to you." "Oh. Why, thank you," Ms. Wednesday said, coldly. "Hey, Crocus, how do we get out of here?" Naruko asked, ignoring Sanji's antics. "Oh, right, follow me," Crocus said, before jumping into the stomach fluids, swimming to a ladder, and opening a hidden door. "Don't ask how, we don't know." "Through the door," Luffy commanded. Usopp turned the ship and guided them through the first door and tunnel, until they reached a second door. When it opened, they were greeted by the real sky once again. "Woo, it's good to be outside again." Nami cheered, and Usopp quickly nodded behind her. What do we do with these two? Zoro asked, pointing to Mr. Nine and Ms. Wednesday, still knocked out. Zoro grinned mischievously. Mr. Nine, that name seems strangely familiar. Mr. Nine shook his head in denial. And no, you're mistaken. Ms. Wednesday quickly came to his defense. Could you please give us a ride to our town at Whiskey Peak? She asked, sounding desperate. Of course, my dear, Sanji replied, holding her hand and bowing. Do they have meat? Luffy asked, drooling slightly. Yes, we have plenty of food, my friend. If you take us there, you'll have a feast like you've never seen. Mr. Nine boasted, and Luffy's eyes lit up with excitement. To Whiskey Peak, he shouted, pointing toward the direction of the town. Naruko laughed and smiled, creating a hammock out of dark energy. Og, I'm going to take a nap. She yawned and looked at Zoro, then to the two captives, or guests, and back to Zoro, who nodded in understanding. Naruko followed suit and tilted her hat, falling asleep. Some time later, Naruko woke up to a heavy feeling on her chest. She tilted her hat to find Nami sitting on her waist. Hey Nami, what's up? Naruko asked, blushing a little, as Nami began playfully rubbing her chest. Naruko. I want you. Couldn't you tell? Nami whispered softly, sending a slight blush across Naruko's face. Naruko smirked but decided to ignore the moment, not wanting to encourage anything out of place. What's with this welcome? I've never seen pirates act like this before, Naruko said skeptically, turning away from Nami. Zoro walked over next to her and whispered, we should keep our guard up. Hello young pirates. I am Agaram, it's a pleasure to host you at our lovely town. We pride ourselves on music and the best liquor in the seas. Allow us to throw a party in your honor. Agaram announced. Before anyone could say anything, Agaram shouted in joy, let the party begin. And then I was the great Sea King and said, leave if you know what's good for you. Usopp exaggerated as everyone around him cheered. Now, it's time for a drinking game. Every time someone says cheer, you drink another pint. The last person standing wins 100,000 pelly. Agaram announced, and the group began drinking. Come on, you sissies, you can't hang, Nami shouted as men around her started dropping like flies, including Zoro and Naruko, who were laid out on the table, passed out. You might as well give up, missy. You'll never beat me, said a rather large woman, grinning. Oh yeah? Another round. Nami challenged. Just as the woman was about to drink her next mug, she keeled over, unconscious. Ha! I told you I'd win. Nami cheered, but she too collapsed, unconscious from the drinking. If one were to look around, they would see the entire Straw Hat crew sprawled out around the whole bar, sleeping like they had been drugged or something. Oh wait. They had. Later around midnight. The confident lady in a black hood came out of the bar. She lowered her hood and looked at the three in front of her. Well, it took long enough, but they're all out like lights. I think it would be best to act now, Mr. 8. Agaram, also known as Mr. 8, nodded. Yes, that would be most wise. I don't know why we wasted our supplies on them. We should have captured them when they first entered the bay, said Miss Wednesday. Well, no. Cough cough. No point in arguing now that it's done. Just round them up. Well, I thought I smelled something fishy, and I was right. Right, Naruko? Everyone looked up to see Zoro standing on top of a building with his left leg propped up on the ledge, resting his right hand on his white sword. Naruko was sitting on the ledge of the building with her left leg hanging down, the other resting on the ledge so she could keep her right hand on it. The giant moon was directly above them, illuminating them in a way that made them look, for lack of a better word, impressive. Well, to be honest, I think that smell might just be your upper lip, Zoro, Naruko teased. Zoro gained a tick mark and stared down at his friend. But yeah, you were right. Baroque Works, huh? Kinda a silly name, if you ask me. Zoro nodded his head. Oi, are you guys still going by those code names? Hearing grumbles from the group, he assumed the answer was yes. Well, looks like you and I get to have some fun, eh, Naruko? He looked down at Naruko, only seeing her evil grin since her hood was covering the rest of her face. Nope. You're on your own, Zoro, Naruko replied, surprising all the Baroque Works agents and Zoro. Humph. Fine, not like I need your help anyway, Whiskers. Naruko's eye twitched at the name. Well, you're going to fight all of them blindfolded. It's time to see how well you've come along in your observation hockey. Zoro's eyes widened a bit before he smirked, pulling his bandana from his arm and wrapping it around his head, making it into a blindfold. Well, let's get started. Zoro then jumped down, charging toward all of the bounty hunters. He pulled out all of his swords and began swiftly defeating their forces. Naruko looked down, smiling as she felt a presence behind her. She turned and looked, seeing Miss Wednesday. Her expression changed suddenly to a serious one. Naruko used Saru and appeared behind the now identified Miss Wednesday, grabbing her by the throat and lifting her off the ground. Now, I'm only going to ask this once. If you lie, you'll regret it. Are you Vivi Nefertari, Princess of Arabasta? Naruko asked with a gaze that could pierce the soul. Miss Wednesday was terrified, nodding slowly. Naruko loosened her grip slightly. Why are you really here, Princess? Naruko inquired. Vivi was about to respond when a loud explosion caught their attention. Naruko looked over to see Zoro, slightly panting, his clothes charred and his bandana around his head instead of his eyes. Naruko looked to see two people in front of her, a man with dark skin who seemed to be picking his nose, and a woman holding an umbrella and wearing a yellow hat. That's Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. You have to help your friend, he's going to be in danger, Vivi said, looking terrified. Naruko just yawned. Nah, Zoro can handle those two anyway. Back to Naruko, what's going on and why is Miss Wednesday here? Naruko turned to see Luffy walking with Nami. Well, this is actually Princess Vivi of Arabasta, Naruko said, causing Luffy's eyes to widen. That's so cool, Luffy yelled as Zoro jumped up onto the roof, holding a beaten-up Igaram. Yo, those two were looking for Miss Wednesday. They said. Yeah, we already know, Zoro, Nami cut in. Now, what's a princess doing in an organization like Baroque Works? Nami asked, curious about the situation. After a few minutes and a huge sob story, they found Igaram on the ground, bowing and asking for the Straw Hat Pirates' help. Sure, we'll take you to Arabasta, Luffy said calmly. Of course, we'll be getting a nice reward for this, right? Nami asked, more as a statement than a question, and Vivi nodded. Just out of curiosity, you said you infiltrated Baroque Works, so you must know who the leader is, right? Mr. Zero? Luffy asked. Vivi shook her head. No, I could never tell you that. Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, would never let you live. Just then, Nami began shaking Vivi back and forth, yelling at her for not staying quiet, which would now put them all in danger. The group fell silent as everyone heard laughing coming from Naruko, who had tears in her eyes. No way. You mean Captain Crocodile is running all of this? Oh, this is too much. Naruko began to calm down as she looked at Vivi, who was stunned by her reaction. Why are you laughing? Vivi asked, confused. Naruko smiled. Ah, that was a good laugh. Well, the reason it's funny is because I've already beaten Crocodile before. What? You beat Crocodile before? Vivi asked, astonished. Naruko nodded while Nami, Zoro, and Vivi stared wide-eyed. Luffy wasn't as surprised since he figured Naruko could handle most of the current 7 warlords of the sea. Naruko smiled as she looked up, her chin resting on her hand. Yup. It was back when I was with the Whitebeard pirates. We had a run-in with him, and Pops told me to fight him as a test. Of course, I defeated him, not to say he didn't get a couple of good hits in, but I'm definitely more than a match for him. Vivi stared wide-eyed. This was unbelievable. Then, they heard flapping and saw the unluckies flying away, the bird and whatever the other creature is that draws pictures. Well, he's going to know we know now. Let's head to Arabasta, Zoro. Go grab Sanji and Usopp, Naruko ordered. Zoro nodded as he ran off to get them. Princess Vivi, I'll go in disguise and try to be a diversion, Igaram said, now wearing a rather unconvincing version of Vivi's outfit. I wish you the best of luck, Princess, he added, walking away to the docks. After a quick regrouping with the crew, with Usopp and Sanji whining about staying, they set sail, only to see an explosion in the distance. Vivi's eyes grew wide. That was Igaram's ship, she shouted in panic. Everyone watched in awe as they saw the destruction of the ship. Before they could react, Zoro, Luffy, and Naruko turned to the railing of the 2nd floor and looked at the lady sitting there. Well, those were some interesting fireworks, huh? The mystery lady said. Well, I didn't think I'd see Nico Robin working with Crocodile. This is truly surprising, Naruko said with a grin, which Robin returned. Wish I knew your name, handsome, but I'm on company time, so I can't dilly-dally for too long. To make things short. She threw an eternal log pose at Naruko, who caught it. That's an eternal log pose to Drum Drum Island. It'll take a while for the Baroque Works agents to catch up if you skip ahead to that island. Naruko nodded, sensing no lies from Robin. Well, I'm off. I hope I see you around, handsome, Robin said with a wink, and Naruko smirked, which for some reason seemed to ignite a flame of jealousy in Nami. Then Robin jumped off the boat onto a giant turtle and began to float away. Captain, I could sense she was telling the truth. I think we should use this, Naruko said, and Luffy nodded. Well, let's go. Naruko looked at Nami and Sanji, as the crew prepared to set sail for Drum Drum Island. Oi, Nami, Sanji, I think it's time for some training, Naruko said with an evil glint in her eye. You'll both be training in armament hockey. Since you like using that staff, Nami, we're going to focus on your hands. Sanji, it's pretty obvious we'll work on your legs. So let's get started. This is Arabasta, pretty hot, Sanji said, looking at Nami and Vivi. We need to get some clothes for the desert, Vivi stated as they weighed anchor. Yeah, no doubt, Naruko said as she walked out and looked around. Hey, where's Luffy? Fo-oad, Luffy yelled as he ran off into the city. Well, there goes our hopes of going unnoticed, Naruko sighed, shaking her head. Nami came up next to her and put a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, Naruko, we'll all be fine. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed her on the cheek, much to the frustration of Sanji, who glared at his fellow blonde but quickly let it go as he saw Nami walking away from the ship. Naruko just stood there, looking around. Hey, I'm just gonna stay on the ship in case some marines spot it or something, she yelled to the retreating forms of her crewmates. Naruko then made a dark hammock and a large overcast from the second level of the ship for shade. This I could get used to, Naruko said as she laid back. Don't get too comfortable, kid. I feel like something's coming soon, so keep your guard up, said Kurama. Naruko mentally nodded and dozed off. Sometime later Naruko was shocked out of her sleep by the loud yelling of voices. She turned her head and looked out at the town to see the crew running towards the ship, screaming at her. Huh? Naruko began to get annoyed as she could not hear their shouts. She quickly swiped her hand, and a black portal appeared beneath them, sucking them in and spitting them out onto the ship. Everyone looked around while Zoro was screaming like a girl, and everyone stared at him. Screw you guys, he screamed and began getting the ship ready to sail. What's going on? Naruko grabbed Nami and asked before she could start shouting orders. That smoker guy was here, and he tried to get us, but Luffy's brother Ace came and stopped him for us, Nami replied and went on to begin shouting orders. Ace is here? What the heck is he doing so far from Whitebeard's main crew? Naruko wondered to herself, not expecting an answer. I'm also curious what could cause Ace to travel this far. Something serious must have happened, Naruko grimly nodded, agreeing with her inner demon. Sanji caught this and wondered what she was thinking. Oi, Naruko, are you okay? He asked, a bit concerned by her crewmate's grim expression. Yeah, Sanji, I'm wondering why Ace would be this far away from Whitebeard's main force, Naruko replied. Sanji nodded and went to his station as they began to sail off. Hey, there's Luffy. What's he? Aw, shoot. And just then, Luffy crashed into Zoro. Shishishishi, that was fun. Everyone looked at Luffy. So that's Ace, huh? Seems really powerful, Zoro stated, and everyone nodded along. Yeah, but I'm still stronger than him. Just then, Ace jumped onto the ledge to see everyone and knocked Luffy down. Who's stronger than who? Ace laughed as he looked around at everyone and sat on the railing. His eyes then stopped on Naruko, who was staring intently at him, and he knew exactly why. Their stare down was interrupted by 5 ships showing up to try and capture them. Zoro, take care of this, Naruko said calmly. Zoro nodded and got into a set stance to slash his sword across. When he did, he used his haki along with the slash as all the ships were sliced in half and began to fall apart and sink. Zoro was panting slightly but regained his bearings after a minute. Ace, what are you doing here? Luffy asked, excited to see his brother. Ace's face grew serious, which caused everyone else to go on edge. Ace stared directly at Naruko. I'm hunting a former member of my crew named Edward D. Teach. He killed a comrade of mine named Thatch. Naruko's eyes widened as memories of Thatch and Teach flowed through her mind. Why? Naruko shouted, as everyone looked at her, then back to Ace. Thatch acquired the Yami Yami no Mi, and Teach was waiting for a chance to get that one fruit. And he took it by stabbing Thatch in the back and running. So now, I'm hunting him down. Everyone was looking at Ace until there was a sickening aura in the air that seemed to choke everyone. The skies seemed to darken and rumble as the waves began to churn as if God himself was upset. They then turned to see Naruko's hat covering her eyes. You could see streams of tears coming down her face as she thought back to her older brother-like figure and realized how he had been betrayed and killed. She then looked up at Ace with demon-red eyes, and darkness poured off of her. "Ace," Naruko said, her voice taking on a demonic tone, shocking everyone on the crew and Ace himself. "If you don't find him before I do, there won't be anything left to find," Naruko shouted as she walked off the second level and down to the lower levels of the ship. Soon, the skies cleared up, and the waters began to calm as everyone stared wide-eyed at the power they had just felt coming from their comrade and friend. Baroque Works HQ. When will you be here, boy? It's about time I get revenge for the scar you left me with. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more awesome content. Until next time. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.